Good morning, good morning. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Sunrise Extra. You're probably wondering, Brenda, what did you do with Nina? She always starts Sunrise Extra. Well, she gave me the privilege of doing it just because we have a very special guest, Dr. Doreen Dodgen-McGee. She is a Portland psychologist, and recently I did a story with her about coupling during a pandemic and kind of protecting your partnership. It is a juicy, meaty topic,
Yes,
and I cannot imagine anybody better to kind of kick it off than Dr. Doreen. She's been a regular here. Thank you so much for getting up early with us. You confessed to me while we were in the newscast that you are not an early morning person. So we want to invite everybody to take advantage of this opportunity. Jump in if you have comments or questions for Dr. Doreen. We'll be monitoring them on Facebook, on YouTube. You can also text in your questions to 503-226-5111. Nina, did I cover everything I need to cover before we jump in?
Stellar job hitting all aspects of that. Director Brian, if you would flip prompter for us so we can, there we go. Now I can see you and look at you. And Dr. Doreen, we love you. Thank you for coming on.
Mwah, mwah.
Talk about coupling, because Brenda was asking you some juicy questions in our story that started this morning. What did you guys cover?
Well, we covered a lot of things, and Brenda had some great questions. And I think I've also now been hyper aware of all the questions that have come to me between when Brenda and I were able to speak and now. And I think that just one of the things that I continue to hear is how the longer this goes on and the more unknown the end time of it is, the harder it is for couples to be able to figure out how they're going to continue what felt like a sprint at the start and is now really showing itself to be a marathon. That this is really taxing people's communication skills, it's taxing people's patience, and especially for couples if they are sheltering in a relatively small space with younger kids or even older kids, that it's really hard to figure out how to privilege some time for the relationship when you're also trying to tend to so many other things like schooling at home, working at home, and the like.
You gave me some really interesting, concrete examples of things that we can do as couples to keep the lines of communication open. And also, I mean, I don't know about you guys, Drew and Nina can weigh in too, but I run out of things like, what are we gonna do? We always had our go-to of dinner out or a movie or a play or something, but it was not necessarily in our household. But Doreen, can you just share a couple of the suggestions if people are looking for new at-home date nights?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable and maybe to be willing to look silly or to try something new, which can be really challenging if you're feeling like your partner and you are already a little bit on edge. It can be very vulnerable to say like, okay, now we're going to be vulnerable and try something different and new with each other. But it would be great right now to do some things like trying maybe cooking a new recipe together, since you can't go to a restaurant and have a new meal. Or I do know a group of folks who are reading plays to each other. And so they're taking turns just reading every other character line, reading back and forth. This is also a great time to maybe learn a new skill. Maybe you decide that you're going to take up origami and you hang it from a branch in your bedroom or something and make it kind of fun for this time to see how much you can build onto it. This would also be a time where if one of you has a skill that the other doesn't, potentially you could teach that to each other. Something like an instrument, or maybe if one of you plays an instrument, maybe this would be the time to order a harmonica or even just something as simple as a kazoo for the other to join along. But to become playful, this is, I think it's a time where people are getting out their puzzles and their board games, and those can last us for a while. But for the long term, we're going to have to get really creative and be willing to kind of get outside of our comfort zones in order to connect in meaningful ways.
Drew, what about you? I'd be curious to hear from a man's perspective, what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling about this whole couple quarantine deal.
Did you want a real man's perspective, or did you want my perspective?
Come on now. Don't troll me.
I mean, honestly, Brenda, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, and Nina, and the good doctor, and why wouldn't I be honest, I'm not nailing it right now, you might say, in this category. That was actually phrased terribly. I'm not doing a very good job of keeping things fresh, so to speak, right now. I mean, our day is like, hey, how are we going to survive this whirlwind of you're working, I'm working, they're in school, but still right here. They need to get out. They don't have friends that they can hang out with. They're constantly fighting and arguing. We got to get lunch together. We got to get dinner together. We got to help them with the homework. Let's just get to bedtime and then we'll close our eyes and we'll do it again tomorrow. Sound like a plan, my friend? Yes. High five to my wife, and we're back into the next day.
It is. It's like a big old treadmill. I mean, we have been, Jeff and I, kind of nipping at each other, kind of like arguing. I just feel more edgy, Doreen, in general. Yes. I just feel on edge, even though I don't even think I realize it. But you know how your body kind of holds on to stress, even if you're not consciously thinking about it?
Yes, and I think this is something I'm hearing over and over and over, that even when someone intends right now to complete a project or start a project, that there's a really difficult process by which we try to get focused right now that is failing almost every single time. And I think the way I'm coming to think about that is there is this constant background noise that is reminding us that there is a lot of stress and that there is a lack of potential for us right now. We've lost a lot of freedoms. We don't have the same access to supports that we have, just even in terms of if we need that last minute ingredient, racing off to the store to get the one thing. You know, everybody's kind of ambiently aware of limitations right now. And I think it makes us especially challenged in working with our most intimate partner, because we feel like we're safe with them. They're going to accept us no matter what. So we can be a little more snippy. And in some ways right now, that's probably a sign in some instances of a healthy relationship, that we aren't having to kind of keep it all together there. That sometimes if our partners can take a little bit of that, we might actually be more kind and loving, engaged parents right now, because it's a reality that we're stressed and stretched. And in those situations, we're not our best. And I just rhymed.
On top of it all. So this week, Doreen is here. She was here today talking about some ideas that couples, can do to kind of, do something new, kind of keep it fresh. Tomorrow, Doreen is going to be talking about communication. And Dr. Doreen, what you just said, maybe you can give people a little preview who may not be up at 5 or 6 in the morning, but join us here at 7. Tomorrow in the communication category, you have a pretty cool trick. I had never heard of it before you told me, but it's commonly referred to as ouch and oops. Can you tell us how that works?
Yeah, it works really beautifully, and it's really based on the principle of the idea that if we talk ahead of time about how we're going to manage difficult situations, we already have something in place. So when my partner says something to me that feels way out of line or feels personally painful, we've already decided ahead of time that I can say, ouch. And that is just this very quick way of saying, that did not land well, or that was maybe not the best way that you could communicate with me right now. And then my partner can say, oops, and try again. And this is a way of trying to have an instant kind of predetermined way of managing through difficult moments without having to dig way in, or without having to let them get worse and worse and worse and worse throughout that treadmill day that Drew just talked about. And I think in times like this, anything that we can have that gives us those little quick handholds can be a huge help and a huge tool.
Kaylee Jensen, I've got Facebook up here too. She's watching us right now, and she says that her husband has really stepped up and has been so wonderful. He actually said, and props to him, he said the first week he didn't realize, oh shoot, where did it go? How much her workload was. So last night he made a beautiful setup for a date night at home. Yeah, a lot of people, who go away to jobs and their partner, is the stay-at-home kind of caregiver, or takes care of all that stuff at home. You don't see all that stuff that gets done. Maybe you come home and the laundry's put away and the dishes are done and you just don't really think about it. But yeah, all those activities that people do for their kids, or to kind of keep up the house, is hidden until it's not. So I love
that. That's a really great point to in terms of maybe directing couples to keep track of the things that they notice that are wonderful about their partner right now, or the things that are surprising, or the new things, and having a way of keeping track of that. Maybe having a little bowl with strips of paper next to it where you can write affirmations or things you've noticed that you're grateful for about your partner right now. And that way, when you need that, you can go and dip right into that bowl as a way of kind of giving yourself some encouragement when you need it. But it's from your partner.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple of things here, gang, from our Facebook feed. One from a follower called A Little Clarity. We hear from her quite often on Sunrise Extra, A Little Clarity. She says, this is so funny that this is your topic. She says it's super important. This is something she was just talking about in her own life. It's super important that we remember we are under a tremendous amount of stress right now, and that it's common to snap. So it's very important to say you're sorry as soon as you've realized you've messed up, and to pick your battles wisely. And then one more, which I actually feel is important, from our friend Jeff Lucas. Dr. Doreen, Jeff is a frequent follower, a dedicated follower of Sunrise Extra. Jeff says, you know, it's nice to not see all those "my partner is so wonderful, blah, blah, blah" posts on Facebook all the time. And I will tell you, my friends, those do bother me a little bit. It's like, oh, come on, things can't be that great in your life. Stop faking it.
What's kind of your stance on those, Doreen? I mean, because Doreen specializes in tech addiction and media and all of that kind of stuff, and the feeling we get from scrolling and, you know, my life is perfect and I'm going on this vacation and filters and all that stuff, and what that does up here. How are those posts? I mean, people want to give, you know, like public pats on the back to their partner of like, oh, so-and-so is so awesome, they did this for me, while other people are like, gag. What do you kind of see as the pros and cons of doing that stuff on social media?
I think right now is.
How do you feel about lying on Facebook, Dr. Doreen?
Not so good, not so good. However, it's mostly the way that Facebook works. So I think that right now there's a lot of hyper performing that's happening, and people are loving to post about great successes because, again, our sources of feedback are limited right now. Mm-hmm. And so that's a place where people can get a lot of solid and reliable feedback. I think what I would encourage right now is, if you feel tempted to do that post, what about giving yourself 24 hours before you do that, and instead giving that feedback to your partner directly, and really taking the time to look them in the eye, to affirm them, to thank them, to express gratitude, and have that be between the two of you. Because when we do relationships as performance art, when we do relationships as performance art, it does take a little bit away from the intimacy of the moment, and it also does set your relationship up in a somewhat unrealistic way. And right now, I think people need encouragement that is related to how to live authentically more than they need something that is idealized to compare themselves against and feel kind of wanting or lacking.
Doreen, do you think that this is going to just kind of go back to the status quo once this is over? Or do you think this is a big enough thing that it's kind of shaken up our priorities? I mean, things like just blathering on Facebook, or do you think it'll be any more real, I guess, from here on out once this is over? Or is it just human nature to kind of settle into the norm?
That's an interesting question, and I, of course, anything I would guess right now would be speculative. I certainly hope that this makes us very aware and very present to our human desire for connection. And I think we do tend to be a people group in the West that is about immediate gratification. And so I fear that when we are able to leave our homes and engage with others more directly, that we might lose the memory of how hard this was to not have things like a high five outside of your partnership, or a hug, or to be able to look in someone's eyes and have meaningful connection. But I certainly hope that it will it will enhance that. The other thing that I'm hoping is that people will take enough time in this time where we are sheltering in place to get comfortable with things like boredom and reflection and time kind of self with self and self with meaningful others, so that we will build the kinds of robust relationships with ourselves that we will hold on to those rather than just kind of emerging back into spending so much of our time when we have full freedom with our screens, because we know that that has a huge cost. And right now is not the time probably to think about moderating tech time, even though it is really important to step away from it for significant amounts of time right now, because it creates incredible physiological dysregulation and also emotional dysregulation.
Mm-hmm. The clients that you have, your patients that you counsel and talk to, what are they most stressed out about right now? Is it their job or lack thereof? Is it, self-isolation if they're alone and they don't have other people in the home? What are you kind of hearing from the people that you're talking to?
The thing that I'm hearing most consistently is that everything is just amped up. Our expectations are amped up, our feelings are amped up. Then I'm finding a great divide for folks, either folks maybe who have been furloughed or lost their jobs, have incredible anxiety and very little stimulation, very little to do. The folks that have continued to be able to move their work remote are, to me, seeming as though they're working longer hours and feeling increased stress there. So everybody is just very, very at capacity, I think. And I think the thing that is most difficult is that we are not very practiced in a consistent basis in a day-to-day way with dealing with our big emotions. And so we're feeling either very amped up and anxious, at the same time not having much to do to distract us from it, or we're feeling amped up and anxious and totally overwhelmed and working 12-hour days. And so everybody, it feels to me, feels like there are just kind of these big messes or explosions that are just right under the surface, and that goes to that point that Drew made too, of we are so on a treadmill right now of just having to get things done and having to be creative. So we're kind of taxed in all of our flexible creativity channels, at the same time having just more and more and more heaped on with that constant ambient background awareness that we don't know when this is ending. So I'm talking a lot about this as a marathon and not a sprint. And the tricky thing is it's a marathon that we didn't prepare for and that has a constantly moving finish line. And those two things, being unprepared and then unknown, are not things that we as humans are used to dealing with on a prolonged basis. So I think now is about the point in this journey where people are going to start seeing difficult behavioral habits that they are having a harder time changing, like maybe they've been drinking a little too much, or tuning out, or not connecting with their partner. And now everything is going to become, as we become less and less, our legs are less and less fresh on this marathon. We're less and less patient. And so I think this is going to be a time where we're going to really need to adjust our expectations with each other. We're going to need to really amp up our self-care. And for parents, that is really hard, but finding times where we can tend to ourselves and the crucial relationships, even more than having our houses look perfect or having the projects that we started be completed. I think this is going to be a time to conserve energy.
Can I just real quickly, Dr. Doreen, I want to make sure my wife heard one of those last things you said. Mia, Dr. Doreen said you need to lower your expectations regarding your partner.
Is she
You are
awake?
so bad.
Hopefully she heard that.
Oh my God. Well, you know what, Drew? I mean, Stanford Walker, Doreen, is one of our regulars on Sunrise Extra.
Yes.
He follows and he's in conversation with us. Listen to this. Are you guys seeing this? He said, I have had 3 sets of friends that have filed for divorce because of all the negativity online and in social media. I mean, I have heard of that kind of COVID divorce syndrome. Like maybe they can't do it now, but things really get blown up. And Doreen, you were telling me before too that pre-existing conditions in a relationship during this crisis are just bound to flare at home.
They are. And the more we can, again, be intentional and aware of that we're going to be short with each other. There are going to be difficult days, things that have been lurking under the surface that we've been able to deny or avoid just because our world has been bigger. We're not going to be able to do that. However, now, unless you have a really good marriage therapist, now is probably not the time to try to tackle those bigger underlying issues. This would be a time instead to come up with a game plan for how you are going to navigate these close quarters, or if you need to, how you're going to exist in the close quarters with enough space that you aren't constantly kind of bumping up against each other. And this may mean just things like agreeing ahead of time to not teasing each other or not picking on the thing that you know that is, your partner's difficult spot. This is a time where, most of us want intense attention from our partners. And sometimes if we can get more intense attention from them with negativity, we will choose that rather than withholding kind of our bid for intense attention and trying to get positive, if that makes sense.
Oh, that sounds twisted, but it does sound familiar. Unfortunately. Oh my gosh.
There was another great comment to follow up on that from Craig, who's watching again on our Facebook feed right now. Craig Kelly Villanueva, and I don't know, Dr. Doreen, if this is in your wheelhouse or not, but Craig says, need sunscreen, getting a tan from the refrigerator light. What can I do to stop visiting my best friend, the refrigerator?
Oh my God. I second Craig's question.
It's a new door we can open and suddenly light and taste and like all kinds of sensory stuff comes to us when we open that door. So I think being aware of that is a really great thing, and being aware if you are eating in order to try to kind of calm emotions, or again, it's another way we can just get sensual stimulation is by eating. So amping up the way that we are tending to our senses in our homes, I think can be really great as a kind of an antidote to that. Having interesting smells around your house, having new interesting things you can pick up and do. Maybe you have never knit before, but maybe you order some yarn and knitting needles, or a little handheld like manipulative game like Rush Hour or something. But some things that use your hands that also engage the other senses in your body can be helpful. Even, there's research around even playing a different genre of music than what you play can just, kind of wake up your senses in a way that are going to make you pay more attention to that auditory sense than going and getting something to put in your mouth.
I love that the fact that people are trying new things, out of the sheer, time filling aspect of, people are learning to bake their own bread and trying to learn to cook finally. And I love that idea of let's pick a recipe, let's print it out and cook it with your partner as something to do kind of together and work together. Maybe someone's better at chopping stuff. Maybe someone is just the stirrer. Maybe, you can set the table and kind of work together that way, get the kids involved. Or maybe at the end of the day, you're all just freaking sick of each other and you want to eat on the front porch or something in the sun by yourself. I don't know. But I do love that people are kind of getting creative and trying new things.
Yes, I think it's great. And I would even encourage people to do something like get out ingredients and try something without a recipe right now. Really, literally pushing yourself to get creative in new ways where you kind of let go of the ego a little bit and let go of everything being perfect and just try some things for the sheer experience of them.
I love it. Dr. Doreen, you always make me feel better. I don't even care what we're talking about. You have a way that you reach out to people and help people, so we appreciate you joining us and helping us out here on the stream. And just to put a little bug in your ear, Doreen is going to be back on TV with me on Thursday and Friday talking about communication and online dating in the age of coronavirus.
Oh boy.
All right, we're going to sign off. Hope you guys have a great day. Doreen, thanks again. Be well.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.